Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I, I can.
How are you
Where,
doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Where
Good.
are you today?
I'm in Madison, Wisconsin at the SCN Summit.
Yes, SCA. I wanted to go. I'm at
I
Rural
know.
Rice.
Well, yes, you have to be at Rural Rise. So next time well, hopefully they'll coordinate it better. So
Yes. How
yeah,
is it going?
it's good. It's good. It's like you're around your people. That's what you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's what we do. So there's a bunch of people here, uh,
Yay.
and we miss you. But then you have a bunch of people there that we know. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's going really good. And it's been really cool to be in this community. They were sharing how they haven't had a conference in this conference center for 3 years. And
really,
so it we're making a huge impact on the local economy, like just by being here,
that's
even by
powerful.
here. Yes.
Yeah, we,
And
we
so,
we forget that that's also part of the deal, that you have an impact on the local community. So we had dinner last night with this person, the CIO, the Chief Investment Officer for American Family Insurance. Hi, Mike. Hi, Beth.
Hello.
Eric, look at all the team is here. So the American Insurance people actually uh, built this space that Starting Block is in, which is amazing that the company invested in entrepreneurship and innovation. So it's really cool to be around a company that gets it. And so we talked about how we get that story shared out,
yeah.
and so Tyler's here. So maybe we'll just focus Tyler and go, hey, go talk to this guy. So it's all good. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
We'll give everybody a couple of minutes to get on, and then Eric, are you in a basement somewhere?
Oh,
If,
I'm not even muted. I was trying to unmute myself and I didn't realize I was talking in the clear. No, I'm in a different co-working space in town here in Albuquerque.
Excellent.
We got party globes and all that kind of stuff because that's how we roll.
Okay.
I'm in a different co-working space. That's awesome.
That's wonderful. So this space that they have here at Starting Block is absolutely fabulous. So Tiffany's sharing that she's at Rural Rise, and tell them what you just shared with me, because I'll probably delete it from the video.
Yeah, so we are in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, which is a community that used to be really vibrant. This place was the first conference center to be constructed in Arkansas, and it was really big, and they had Elvis come, and it was like really exciting. Well, the community has been on the decline for the last decade or so, and people keep moving out, and they've not had any sort of function at all in this space for the last 3 years. And so to have us in here has just been really powerful, especially for the local people who are so excited sharing their memories of what a happy place this used to be and all of the community activity that this place brought together. You can tell that it means a lot for them to see that happening again through this experience. So that's been really cool.
So thanks for doing that, because I think that definitely aligns with the idea of the call. So that's a good way to lead off. And I am calling you from the Starting Block in Madison, Wisconsin, where the Startup Champions Summit is being held. So people that you know are here as well as with Tiffany over there. So before I turn the call over to Tiffany, I just wanted to share that we had dinner with the CIO of American Family Insurance last night, who's one of the people that motivated this effort here in Madison, which they're going to be replicating in downtown Milwaukee. And the vision of a corporate entity that wants to spark innovation and entrepreneurship and putting their money where their mouth is. And so there's a lot of discussion around how you rally people in your organization, internally, externally, to do this. So I thought that was really appropriate, being that this call is about mission and vision and such. So, so I'm going to put out an intro question, since I don't know that this is one of those calls that we don't have as many individual projects, but this is something that we should focus on together, because we have to create a mission and a vision for a lot of people in the community, some that don't even know that they're part of the community. So how do you create a mission and vision when you don't know who all your stakeholders are? So I think that that's really interesting. So be a fun exercise. So my opening question for you, as you introduce yourself and whatever little tidbit or organization or whatnot that you want to share, then will you tell me about some mission and vision that speaks to you? So whether it's an organization or somebody who's talking about mission and vision statements, like something that resonates with you that you want to bring into the conversation of how to develop, how you came across a mission and vision, or something that will hopefully influence our work as we come together. So I know that's a really vague and broad question, but it's kind of a vague and broad thing that we're trying to codify. So think about a mission or a vision, or how people formed one that that you want to introduce as we think about this work. So I will popcorn to Mike.
I accept your popcorn, Cecilia. Thank you. I'm in Cincinnati right now, and man, the last month has been fairly busy. Climate Week is coming up, and there's just lots we're getting ready for around that and related. I'll say that personally, I'm in a role where we're often thinking about how do you get to a vision and mission, and then how do you populate the space between your current state and what you've articulated as that future state. And I think that's been one of the most helpful bits of guidance along the way, is that a good vision describes the world when it's the way you want it to be, when you've done what you're setting out to do. So in some ways, it's a slightly impossible theoretical world, but as succinctly and elegantly and even kind of with character that matches your organization or the type of effort that you're doing, the more that you can describe that world in your unique voice, the better of a vision it is. And then against that, you can, and I'll just say too, some people want to call something a mission or a vision. These are all tools that we have created as human beings to try and gather people and help them really connect around something and co-identify around something that isn't yet in the world, but that you're trying to do together. And so, a quick example that I had heard early on, making cancer history. 3 words that communicate so much about what an organization is trying to do. And it has a little bit of a play to it too, which I think says something about the way they're going about doing that they're experimenting, for a hospital system, talking about cancer, to do it in a way that has a play on words, I think is really powerful, actually. So anyway, for me, a powerful vision is something that it's a few words that everybody knows that you can say really quickly. So I will popcorn on over to Brett.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'm gonna coattail that one. I had Oxfam as an example. We started. I moved from the educational space to running a nonprofit and had no nonprofit experience. We had to build a strategic plan a few years ago, and we started with, all right, well, we really got to define mission and vision. And so, hold on, I'm gonna find a quiet place. When we got into it,
Sounds like your computer is deflating, by the way.
It is like a snake.
yeah, no, a weed whacker. I like to double up and do some. So we had a real hard time with it, and so I started looking at some organizational examples out there, and Oxfam's is a world without poverty. Just towards Mike's point, just super clean, easy, and I was way overthinking it. So I think once you get there, you have that very clear, ambitious, easy to understand vision. Everything can trace back from there. Forward Cities, our real goal, which is vision based, is closing the wealth gap in America. Again, it's easy to wrap your head around. So yeah, that's my example to share. And I will go to Katie.
Yeah, Katie, just to catch you up, the question that as we introduce ourselves and think about what we're doing, what we wanted to do is have you please share a mission or vision input that you'd like us to keep in mind as we do this work.
Okay.
And I guess who is on? Okay, so and
So-
Katie, tell us who you are for those people who don't know you yet.
Okay, so I'm the Director of Entrepreneurship Initiatives at Wake Technical Community College in Wake County, North Carolina. And I guess, and so the work that I do is to find holes in the entrepreneurial fabric in our county and develop programs and raise the money to implement them that solves that problem. So we've created a model for community-based entrepreneurship that's active in 7 of our 12 municipalities. And it's also being shared outside of the state because there are programs in Toronto and Lenawee County, Michigan, and Denver. And looks like there may be one in Kenya, not in the near future. I guess my vision for an entrepreneurial ecosystem is that we actually do have an all hands on deck approach where we really deliberately make sure that all parts of society have a chance to play. And I know in our area, we're very information technology and biotechnology focused, and that leaves out certain communities. And there are cool things happening in certain zip codes and not in other zip codes. And so people focus on all those little exciting pockets, but then there are whole other pockets of people and actually geographic territory that's being totally left out. So that's my vision. I think if we could all agree on that vision, that everybody will have a chance to play, that the way we do entrepreneurial things would change a lot.
Or popcorn over to somebody. Can you hear me, Katie? Okay, so pick somebody that you want to popcorn to.
Okay, how about Brett? You just sent me something, I think.
Yeah, I gave it to you, and I'm sorry, I didn't even notice that you came on late. So that was
Okay. So did you go already, or do I get to throw it back to you?
I went and Mike went. So
Okay.
Look at your Brady Bunch board and pick somebody else.
Okay. Mike.
Oh, he went as well.
Peter.
You're really good at picking the two people who went so far. You must have ESP. Katie.
Let's see.
Peter. No, you got. I'm you. I hadn't been picked yet.
Okay,
Okay.
great, Peter.
So, Katie, can you cut your mic because there's some. Yeah. Thanks. So, I mean, I guess I could think of a couple that. One I'm personally involved with, obviously, and then one it's a group we work with. So we in terms of an idea of a vision, the OECD's vision is, its tagline is "Better Policies for Better Lives," and I can't say that it's one that it puts energy in my thinking about what they do. I know what they do, but it doesn't. I'm not offering it as a good example. I'm offering it as sort of a mediocre example of how an organization describes itself in terms of its vision. Our project, and with apologies to Andy and Celia because they keep hearing me talk about this, we've launched a project that we're talking about is achieving the promise of work, and we chose that to be somewhat both to convey some sort of forward direction, where people are struggling with how work is changing and the structure of work and so forth, and the role of entrepreneurship in how that in their daily lives or in the lives of their community. And we played with this a lot, and we thought that what we wanted to do is to be somewhat self-defining. So the notion of what the promise of work holds for me is different than the promise of work holds for somebody else. I think it does conjure up an image of something that's sustaining, something that offers families the opportunity to live and work and function properly. Whatever the promise of work it means for the community around it. And so we've found that as a sort of a description of a vision, the reaction that we've gotten is that it resonates, but it resonates for people, each person in a different way. And that's intentional. That what we wanted it to be something that is conjured in the minds of the community and so forth. And just as an aside, and this is sort of a funny story, we were playing around with various versions of future of work and so forth. And at one point I suggested to my board that we talk about things in terms of the transfiguration of work. And I didn't realize how many Catholics I had on my board, because all of them went into a collective fetal position, because they were thinking about the nuns going around and talking about the transfiguration of Christ and so forth. And it was, I'm Greek Orthodox. It absolutely didn't even occur to me what the reaction would be. But I strung it along long enough so that they actually thought I was serious. And they finally, I had an insurrection on my hands, so I dealt with it that way. So with that, I'll popcorn it off to Eric.
Yeah, hi everyone. Let's see. So I'm not sure that it was ever exactly codified, but I think one of the things that with the city of Albuquerque, what we were doing with what we call One Albuquerque was that basically our entrepreneurial community, our entrepreneurial ecosystem and the organizations that support our entrepreneurs would reflect the makeup of our community. That's just something that's, we're aspiring to right now, but I think as time goes by, you'd expect to see kind of the success throughout the entrepreneurial landscape reflected as well. So I don't know, that's short, and I'm not sure if it's sweet, but that's my starting point. I will popcorn to Tiffany.
My current organization's mission statement is to inspire and empower innovators and entrepreneurs, which is very vague and which is everybody on this call. And my previous organization did not have a written mission statement because they wanted everyone to put it in their own words. And even working there, I thought that was very confusing. So my experience with mission statements that are effective is minimal, but I do know that regarding vision statement, kind of, expanding on what Mike was talking about earlier, is I am always inspired by the really aspirational visions. Even understanding that some of it is unattainable, it just always conjures in me that sense of possibility and always working for something more and looking towards the future. And so I guess that's what I would want to keep in mind, as we do this work, is just being aspirational, and inspiring. So yeah. Beth, I think, oh, there's two more. I choose Beth.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, my video is not working again. I'm pretty inspired by our regional library system's vision and mission and values. And I think they fit pretty well. The vision being an integral partner in empowering individuals and connecting them to resources and opportunities that positively transform our community through discovery, knowledge creation, and innovation. And their mission is to build a culture of curiosity and creativity by connecting people to information and interactions that ignite ideas, excite passions, and inspire action to improve our collective quality of life. That really resonates with what we've been working on and attempting to do in our community, and I really feel like it does resonate with what we're trying to do at a field level as well. So with that, I am going to popcorn to Ian.
Oh, hello everyone. Andy Stoll from the Kauffman Foundation. I'll just use the immediate one that I have direct experience with, which is the ecosystem building organization that I helped found that's in Iowa. We went through this whole day-long retreat to design the mission, and we got really complicated, and the sentence got really long, and there was a bunch of commas and semicolons and all of this stuff. And we spent like 3 or 4 hours on it, and it was like a board retreat, probably the first year of the organization. And we ended up realizing it was just way too complex. And after like 4 hours, we scrapped it because someone was like, look, no one's going to remember this. No one can, even if you have to read it every time to remember the 17 things it's trying to say. And someone's point was that it had to be simple and memorable and easy to repeat. Because it's a story about what our organization is aspiring to do. And so just reiterating kind of the statement that Mike made of just, making sure that it's succinct. And so the actual mission is accelerating world-changing ideas from Iowa. And it captured some big ideas, but it's easy to remember. I think to play off what Tiffany said, you said it needs to conjure a sense of possibility. I think that's probably the most important thing for a mission statement. As we try to figure out how in the heck we're going to come up with one for this field, I have lots of questions on how we do that, which is I'm hoping this group can continue to explore and bring their ideas to it, like how you actually get to consensus on a mission. But I do know it has to be simple, and I do think it's been lacking. I mean, even the ESHIP Summit, if it were an organization, I know how to get an organization's mission statement in agreement, because there's like people that are employees and leaders, but in a community and in a field, I don't even know where the edge is. And so the ESHIP Summit itself is not an organization. It's the seed of a field, but it is certainly not a field by itself. And I think Eric, who I'm happy that you're on the call today, pointed something out a couple weeks ago or months ago to me, was that the ESHIP Summit doesn't have a one-sentence compelling vision that grabs your attention. The phrase we use a lot is building the field, which if you know what that means and you're in the field, that feels, it may conjure a sense of possibility. For people who are outside of it, it's like, I don't even know what that means. And so perhaps we could think about, as we continue these calls, is like, what is the mission for maybe the movement that's happening around the ESHIP goals? Does that lead into a mission for the entire field eventually? And what Mike said, succinct, and what Tiffany said, conjures. I like that word, conjures a sense of possibility. That's my thoughts. Cecilia, I think you're the last one.
Okay, thank you. So in preparing for this call and as I've been traveling, I was revisiting Patrick Lincolni's The Advantage. And one of the things that was said was to try to recognize that missions and visions should be, like many of you said, lofty and hopeful. So that it's something to aspire to and not just solve for, because I don't think that the mission of this movement is that we get to it and we're done, right? We have to keep moving so that 10 years from now, when there's certification, accreditation, training, and all those things that we think are possibly solving for the goals, there still needs to be some kind of North Star that we're still shooting for in hopes of getting closer. So, so one of the things that he said is to think about, why do we exist? And we should exist to make the world a better place. And how are we doing that? So, so it was really interesting to me to read somebody who thinks about corporate missions and visions, and go back to the mission of the company isn't just to just tell you how to do things, but to how do we do all these things? So anyway, I like all of your responses. I think that because of those things, there's a lot of work to do, and trying to define a field for people that aren't at the table. So I'm going to turn this over to, I think Tiffany and Mike are our hosts for this call, to kind of share like the new iteration of how these calls work, these goal meetups, and this one in particular because it's a little bit different than other projects. So, so I'm going to turn the reins over to you. Happy to help in any other way.
Cecilia, I know I'm one of the two people whose names you just said that you're turning over to, but can I interrupt myself for just a second? I was wondering, just really quickly, any reactions from everybody on the call about what you heard there? Because I think there were some really interesting takes, and just kind of really quickly stepping back, and any comments or questions based on that you noticed, because I have one or two things, but I'd like to hear from all of you too, if there's anything that came up.
I noticed that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I noticed that as people were talking about the missions and thinking about it, you know, you guys all smiled like you had a happy memory. So this was a happy reflection, thinking of the organization and what they do and what they stand for. And I think that is really cool. And that is something that I would love for people to feel and think of when they think about ecosystem building and think about, you know, the support that this community gives each other and to entrepreneurs. But I noticed that everyone smiled, and it was really sweet.
I think one of the things that we keep talking about, the fact that we do, is Andy says that we're basically like t-shirt company, because we come up with like bumper sticker and t-shirt things. But I think that's really powerful because it is conveying in a very short, succinct way the thing, right? Without having to explain this whole long process. So everything's a draft, and cause not due, and all those things are the way we approach this work. So I was talking to Jake Hammond, who's here. Jake is with the Peoria Innovation Alliance, and the person who actually helped create the logo for Startup Champions. And one of the things that he said, he shared, and I'll be happy to share with you the link for their mission and vision, but they also created a tagline. So I think that there's something a little powerful about that tagline, like serve and protect, and first do no harm, and just those very short words can still relay the message. I think you talked about that, Mike, when you were talking about some of the very succinct messages, and maybe if we can get it down to simple.
Yeah, and I was to that point, I was going to say, one of the things that, you know, as you look at different visions and missions, people use them very differently. And some people, they really want that 2-3 word thing that everybody will always have on the tip of their tongue, that is incredibly aspirational and a little bit clever and expresses some of the character of your community. If you can do all of that, great. Sometimes people will do that thing where they list the 3 things that they consider most important. And I'll just say that's not wrong. It's just a very different function that kind of statement has. And so I guess one of the questions is, given our community and given our reality, what do we want this vision to do? What's it for whom is it created? Who identifies with it? I think some of those questions might help us, understand between different choices we might have strategically about how to approach the vision. Andy, the thing I was going to say about yours, I mean, when you read that, there's a little bit of a laugh at the end, because there's this recognition of, I think it was accelerating world building ideas. And then you hear from Iowa and you're like, oh, I get it. That's amazing. You hear those last couple of words and it tells you an awful lot about those people who are doing that. And so I think that's a part of the chance here, is to really express the character of this group, which I think is a strong character. And then finally, I was going to say, in some of the community work we're doing with the Global Commons, we're learning a lot about natural world ecosystems and the planet's systems. And one of the pieces of research that National Geographic did was around what integrated health assessment might look like for ecosystems. And so for the ocean, the one that they came up with, they said the single metric that tells you more than anything is apex predators. Are apex predators doing well? Are there enough of them? And like, what's the ratio of them to the whole? If you made a statement about apex predators, you would not necessarily know that that was a question about anything having to do with ecosystems or some of the weeds that you might get deeply involved in if you're trying to talk about an ocean ecosystem. And so it just makes me, again, it's just a point. We could talk about ecosystems and entrepreneurs. The vision we have may not use some of those words. It may describe something that is an integrated state of being, that when we've done what we say we're going to do, then this is the case. And again, I think making it accessible in terms of language is incredibly powerful. So that's all I wanted to say.
Well, actually, Mike, you bring up an interesting question or point, and that is, well, several interesting points, but the one I'm going to jump on is, are we talking about a vision that is a process vision, which gets into sort of one that Beth put out there, empowering entrepreneurs to enable thriving communities? So is that the vision, or that kind of thing? That's a sort of a process vision, because we're empowering somebody else to do something down the road. Or do we want to focus on the down the road? And then the question of how you get there, there's a role for entrepreneurs to play, but it may be that there are other elements that are going to have to come into the mix too, which I think ultimately, when you start talking about ecosystems, there are other elements that go well beyond just the entrepreneur. I mean, is the community, it's the infrastructure, is there broadband, is there, whatever in the area. Those are all things that enable this result. So I guess the first question is, where do we want to put our attention? Is it in the process, or is it in, and I'm asking, I'm not giving a conclusion here, or is it in the end result?
I'd kind of like to mention that, oddly enough, I'm in the process of training a new facilitator on Fast Track. And we're at the point in the curriculum where we're getting students to write their personal vision statement. And we had a discussion last night in class about, what is that? Is that like what I'm doing now? Is the personal vision statement what I'm going to do to get there? Or what is it? And we concluded that the personal vision statement was the reality of that spot on the horizon that you want to reach. So my recommendation would be that it not be process oriented, but what is the vision of the ecosystem that we'd like to see exist?
I totally agree with that. And in thinking about the ultimate end result, if the infrastructure and the processes and people are in place that empower entrepreneurship to succeed, that then in turn enables communities to thrive collectively across the country, we ultimately have a thriving, economically competitive country again. That's where my head is at this point anyway.
And I'll build on that. I think, and I'm going to build on that, knowing we may be derailing the actual agenda, but I think this is good, which is one of the problems that we're trying to solve when you say you need a mission and a vision for the field of ecosystem building, is that there are many people doing what I would term ecosystem building. Obviously, all of you on the call here, thousands more, but people are doing it for different reasons, and that's fine. But we're looking for a unifying sort of vision or a mission that people can sort of hook their work onto. And so, like, just as an example, when I say people are doing it for different reasons, I think you know this, but you'll talk to some people and they'll say, I'm doing it because I'm trying to end poverty in my community. You have other people saying, I'm building an entrepreneurial ecosystem because I want there to be more technology and more innovation in my community. You have other people who say, well, my job is to create economic development to make our economy great. You have other people say, I help entrepreneurs and build ecosystem because I want all my friends to have the opportunity to make their ideas happen. They're all related. They're obviously different layers of a lot of the same things. But sometimes when you put the economic developers next to the people running startup weekends, they don't think they're talking about the same thing. And so the need is for a compelling vision. And I'm not sure whether it's a process vision or what I wrote down, I call it aspirational vision, the sort of point on the horizon, to use Katie's term. I don't know what it is, but it needs to be something that, at a minimum, the 10 or 11 people on this call can say, like, that is what I do. And that thing informs or helps me understand and explain what I'm doing on a local level. But then what you all are doing in your local communities informs what the field is trying to do. It's sort of a unifying sort of North Star, maybe is the word. So that's my thought based on those conversations.
Can I add just one more short thing? I know that the person who gave me the Patrick Lencioni book also said to me, the mission and vision is the filter that I use to I don't want to say justify, but to check my assumptions, my actions through, so that it should filter into no matter how much fame or notoriety that a certain thing does for me personally, if it doesn't align with my mission and vision, I should not do it, because somewhere along the line, it will come back to bite me in the butt, is his definition of what the mission and vision also serves as. So it does serve as a North Star, but it also serves as a checkpoint to say, is what I'm doing still aligning with the goal that I set in place? So it should have some kind of dual purpose, that you're following the path and the trajectory. And if it doesn't follow that, then we either have to revisit the action or revisit the mission and vision to see where that doesn't stay.
I was just going to say we might, and I'm just starting a little list here in the document, just as a brainstorming list that people can add to whenever. But what are the different requirements for this vision? Just sort of an ongoing, and maybe something like this already exists. But one, I'm putting rally the field. If we can rally the field around something, that's great. If we can communicate with a broader audience, and this is something that helps clarify what we mean, great. If we can help people to co-identify, terrific. So maybe a list like that helps us start to be able to say, here's the things we want from this vision, or ways we hope for it to function. So that's in there if you want it.
Cool. And are you putting this in the document you all shared in the?
I'd like to ask a question. So is the shared vision the vision of how the ecosystem will work, or is the shared vision the vision of how entrepreneurial ecosystem building as a profession will look? Which one of these are we working on?
Not to complicate it, but I think it's a both and answer there. I think that the actual ESHIP goal number 3 is asking for a mission for the profession of ecosystem building that we're trying to build. But I think it greatly influences and is influenced by the vision of ecosystems as a whole, entrepreneurial ecosystems, and yeah, both and.
So I'm not sure we can do both of those at the same time. Maybe we can pick one and decide which one needs to go first, the chicken or the egg.
So let me add two quick thoughts. One, there are ways in which you can get workforce and economic development people, for example, on the same page. I ran a project a few years ago called the Midwest Innovation Initiative, and we were looking at a way in which we can get the two worlds to talk to each other and to come up with a way to sort of have them find agree to a common set of goals. And what we realized was we basically said there, we want the community to solve for two problems. The workforce and economic development communities to solve for two problems at the same time. One is, how do you grow the wealth of a community? And at the same time, how do you shrink the gap between members of the community in terms of wealth? And it was, and there, by the way, there are measures for both. I mean, there's a Gini index for the wealth, and there's the other, there are other measures of wealth for the gap. I mean, and there's other measures of wealth. And it was really interesting because when we put those questions out there, then we actually got real serious conversations going from the people in the room about how you do both those things. And it wasn't a we them kind of situation. It was all of us and what's our respective roles in accomplishing that. So just as a sort of a thought on that, and then I forget what I was going to say on the other one, so we'll just leave it at that. But that was the other point was this. Many years ago, I used to write statutes, work for the Illinois legislature, and I finally came to conclude that the best statutes were the ones that sort of herded people into a certain set of activities, or to herded them into what you want to have them achieve as a set of results, not direct them. And so we did this major reform on workers' comp, and rather than write in very strict standards and things like that, we actually built into the law a process in which the way that the system was going to be operated would be organic. It would be based on a series of case law and actions and people having to honor the decisions that were previously made and so forth. And I kind of think of this project in the same way, and that is, and this is to Andy's point, I think it's the and to both of them. I mean, yes, I mean, you wanted to do both things, but the question I'm sort of posing here is there a way in which you can accomplish the process but do it in a desired way, but do it in a way that you're not saying that that's what you're doing, but you're sort of pushing people into the direction of what you want them to do. And that to me is much more of a sort of an end goal focus kind of thing, as opposed to, being explicit about the activity of building an ecosystem. That is a necessary condition to achieve success, but it doesn't necessarily have to be one that is explicitly stated.
That's helpful.
I'm curious to hear from Brett because, first of all, because you've been very quiet, and secondly, because I feel like the work that Forward Cities does is really about causing, not doing, and exactly to Peter's point, it's like, how do you shepherd, to use Tiffany's term from Rural Rise, how do you shepherd that movement, but you don't walk them, right? So there's something around that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something around that, especially in kind of our foundational model. We look at entrepreneurship as a way to, Andy gave this an example, to lift people out of poverty and to close that wealth gap that I mentioned. So the best way that we can do that is by not trying old techniques that have typically left a lot of the people we're looking to affect out of the equation. So it's heavily community fed in terms of identification of barriers and development of solutions. And, you know, that that's really hard to do, because sometimes you're asking community members that haven't been a part of the process before. And you obviously have to do this with anchor institutions in part. So you're bringing people together that typically haven't really played ball together before. But, you know, I think boiling down from that mission of closing the wealth gap, we've decided that the best way to do it is with this being the center point of our approach. And so we consistently have to revisit it. We consistently have to navigate conflict with it from city to city, and develop some unique and effective norms that will allow for that level of development with these stakeholders in mind, so that we can get to the root of what community feels like, at least allow them to have full input and process of what they feel like are the challenges to overcome and the ways to overcome it. And I think, you know, we're on a multi-year journey, but 2019 has been a huge learning year for our organization. I'm already starting to see it. I work closely with 4 different cities in our network. And I'm already starting to see it in all 4, where some of the early obstacles around us staying true to who we were and that path to vision, you know, meeting a certain level of resistance with stakeholders, especially ones that have typically been in power in the past, starting to wilt a little bit. And it's really in the face of truth, because when you surface ideas from people that have resonance, then it's really hard to say, well, this is the way this organization has always had this role in the makings of an ecosystem. Why wouldn't they continue to? And then all of a sudden you can really shed light on why there's many other entities or individuals that deserve some space there. So it's kind of, I'm bringing it way down from, you know, big long-term vision to what it looks like when you try to engage community on that level. But you know, that's our MO with it, at least in our national work. And you know, it's, as I said, it's starting to really bear some fruit.
I think ownership of vision is hugely important. And it's one thing if you have 5 or 6 people, and another if you're talking about thousands of people. The idea of people actually feeling as if this is a vision that is for them and that they partake in, and even had some hand in crafting. I think it's so important. It's one thing to put a vision out there and say, now who's with us? Another to find a way to actually make that something that people have input to and feel that they share that vision and they were part of, you know, what they want in the world, went into helping to create that vision. It's really hard with that many people. The thing that helps us is there's an awful lot of shared intent already. And so finding the way into that, you know, I think it's not impossible. Is that a hopeful note?
So what now? That's the question, right?
Maybe a process. How do we want to start thinking about creating? Like, how do you ideate that? Is that the new tagline, Eric?
I mean, I would.
I hear a lot of ideas and perspectives, but at some point we have to settle on something and write it down. It's not going to be perfect the first time out, but if we don't start putting something down, we can have this group hug for the next year and not really create any results. So, you know, if the decision is that we're gonna write these things down from 2 perspectives simultaneously, the perspective of what is a shared vision, what the entrepreneurial ecosystem will look like, or is a shared vision what the profession would look like, you know, as a group, pick one or the other or both, but let's start writing something down.
Eric, you were going to jump in, then I'll jump in.
I wasn't necessarily going to jump in, but I think, I mean, one thing is, we could sort of just sort of pick teams, who wants to work on team end state, team, kind of what that end vision is, and another one that wants to work on, what is the process? How do we describe that process in an effective way? And maybe kind of see what those look like. Work off to the side, come back together and see if those things go in sync. Just a thought.
So what I would suggest, or we can do it however you want to approach it, I think the intended format of these calls is that this is a meetup to talk about mission, vision, value formation, both for the field level and obviously it gets reflected in the local level. I am planning, but haven't yet put together a project team around 3.1, around the mission, vision, value. Let me just read the actual title because I always forget what it is supposed to be. But the opportunity that we have around, or the opportunity we have that can help us get there. Let me just read it first before I get too far. So field-wide mission, vision, values, and outcomes. That's goal 3, initiative 3.1. The other, if you look at the notes, the other two are a living dictionary for the field. 3.3 is universal ecosystem building pledge, and 3.4 is an updated Wikipedia entries for ecosystem builder and ecosystem entrepreneur ecosystem. I would like to put together a project team around the field-wide mission, vision, values, and outcomes, and obviously invite anyone on this call to be part of it, because I think the opportunity is that we are having another ESHIP summit on June 29th, July 2nd, which we hope to bring forth about another 500 or 600 ecosystem builders. Every year since the beginning of those summits, many of you have been with us for all of them, we've always said, hey, we should use this opportunity to develop a field-wide mission, vision, values. The problem we keep running into is, well, what in the heck is the process? What would we actually do if we had the chance to get that input on people? Certainly, we've already gathered tons of input broadly around the field, and obviously the ESHIP goals are an output from that. There's thousands of posted notes. I have tons of pages of notes around why people do this, what they want to do, what they're compelled to do it, how they define it. But what we don't have, and what I think the opportunity of a project team is to begin thinking now, even though the event is still 10 months away, to say, what could we do when we're all together? Now, my questions generally are, what is the process we'll use during the event? What is the process we'll use before the event? Is there some work that people in this group that have interest could spend doing some of that work beforehand? I don't think the intention of these monthly calls is to solve everything in this 1 hour call once a month, but really to just keep us coordinated across that. So I'm planning on building a team related directly to the ESHIP Summit 2020 to say, how can that event help us move forward this notion that we're trying to develop a mission and a vision and values for the field of ecosystem building, and that it is a perfect opportunity to also unveil something that would allow people to sort of sign up for, or agree to, or pledge to, or whatever that word is there. But I don't think people will sign up for a thing they don't feel like they had a chance to participate in. So is there input that we can get between now and then? Is there input we can get? I have lots of questions around that. Part of the holdup in forming the project team is we're actually just trying to figure out the foundational questions around the ESHIP Summit, like what time does it start, when does it end? Invited all of those questions. But the intention would be probably in about a month to have those figured out, and then make a project team that can help with the agenda item related to that.
Can I throw out a suggestion, or and maybe this will not lead to anything, but this isn't the first time that that somebody's going to be trying to put together a platform. I mean, this is probably the best way to describe it, as a platform. Mm-hmm. And it may be useful to look at how other institutions have put together platforms. I mean, whenever, writing the Declaration of Independence, there was a process to that, and they kind of muddled through and they got what it did. Same with constitutions. Every political party goes through a platform process. It would probably be be useful to have somebody just do some quick research in terms of how these processes work.
Mm.
And you know, how to get to yes on something, you know, from a very, very diverse population of participants, rather than try to try to invent the wheel, you know, on your own. And it may be that none of those are applied, but they could give at least some hint of ideas in terms of a process. Because I agree with you. I mean, there needs to be something that people have a buy into this thing. But, you know, I can imagine you've got, like you said, tons of pages and God knows how many Post-it notes and things like that.
And I think the other thing I want to emphasize here too is that ecosystem building isn't, we're not trying to build the Kaufman field of ecosystem building.
Yeah.
We are trying to basically accelerate the emergence of it. And so it has to be a process. I mean, a lot of people just say to me all the time, can Kaufman just tell us how to do it? I'm like, well, first of all, we don't know how, but two, we did. I don't think you want, you know, one organization's point of view. And so the process that involves everyone is really the question I have. So I think that question of like, how have other institutions put together platforms? I think that would be a wonderful thing that perhaps this group could visit on our monthly calls. One easy ask I would have would actually be that, you know, Value Web that Mike helps, that is a part of. You guys are experts on processes to emerge sort of collective intent. You've worked with like the global, what's the Global Commons group around developing, you know, basically a platform to address sort of climate change and sustainability of the planet. Would you, I mean, it's, you know, I'd love to have you at a future call actually do a little presentation about what is the Value Web's, you know, what have you learned in the 20, 30 years of helping people do these collective processes? And then if you know of anyone else that's built a platform, maybe they could join you and give an example of how the Value Web has helped someone do that.
So let me ask a question, because I was not at this year's ESHIP, but I was at last year's 2018 ESHIP. And I remember how much time and effort we put into getting feedback and perspective from the audience on the 7 lectures of, okay, and we got all that input. But we haven't created anything from that yet. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm hearing us going into a process hole of trying to boil the ocean. If we've already got that input, can't we just, I mean, and the people on this meeting are the ones who have, of both of those national conferences, have expressed some interest to invest their time and energy into this question. Can we focus on taking the input that we have already and creating a first draft of something that we can then go back to people and get some feedback on it? Maybe the process we work on is how do we get feedback and compile that feedback from them. But I certainly don't want to throw away all that work that's been done over the past 2 events and start beginning with the process of getting more feedback. We got all this feedback already. Let's take the feedback we got. Let's put something together that people can tear up or evaluate or something to get to. We can create a draft 0, and then we can use that, a process of review, to get to draft 1 of whichever, whether we are doing the shared vision for what an ecosystem would look like, or a shared vision for what the profession of ecosystem building would look like. And then I have one more question. Because when I talk about this, I talk about entrepreneurial ecosystem building, which I think is different from general ecosystem building. Maybe a layer thing. So are we focused on general ecosystem building or entrepreneurial ecosystem building?
Mm-hmm. My guess, Mike has thoughts on all those questions.
I have a quick thought, which is, thanks, Katie, for sharing that. My first thought is that your impulse to say, let's be really clear about what we're building a vision for and which language goes with what. I think we may end up mashing these together, but I think it would be really constructive to actually see what happens if we take a point of view on each and say, what is our vision for communities from the point of view of ecosystem builders? What's our vision for ecosystem building field from our point of view? What's our vision for entrepreneurs or entrepreneurship? I think that breaking those up might tell us an awful lot about what's common across them and maybe what's different. And I think it may also give us a chance to try a couple different things out. So I would say if we're going the route of trying a 0 draft, let's do it as specifically as possible against each of those, and then see what that gets us. And we may indeed decide to roll them up into something that's a more integrated picture. But at least that way, we can try getting something concrete, and we can be as specific as possible too.
So I want to answer Beth's question, and to share maybe particularly for Katie about some of the work that's been done. So in 2017, out of all the conversations and the Post-it notes that were collected and the hundreds of hours of conversations, Andy, Enoch, Amanda, mostly Amanda, put together some definitions and drafts of what those goals were, and refined all of that discussion into what was at one time 11 goals and now 7. That definition was put up on the Kauffman website, and I remember being able to comment on those definitions that were out there, and they were further refined through the 2018 summit, and then a group of ESHIP champions, excuse me, people who have been doing the work and elevating and recognized for some of their inputs, kind of bubbled up and refined that wording and processes a little bit more. And as Beth mentioned, there were over 130 initiatives that were proposed. And the process in which the 30 initiatives were recognized was several of us went through and kind of picked out the ones that were more field focused, because we were focused on building a field that goes across across regions, and elevating those up. And then again, a group of volunteers and other people that got involved and recognized and kind of elevated again. So it was several processes. So I think, to your point, exactly what you were talking about, Katie, is creating something and then getting input and further refining it and then getting more input, so that the field itself feels like they help to write the mission and vision. So I think you're spot on. That might be a great process. And so that to Mike's point is if we come at it from several different viewpoints, maybe create a couple of, I know Google Docs can be a pain, but it's probably the simplest way in which we're able to comment and share and iterate together through the course of a month, as opposed to trying to get onto a platform in which we do project management. So it's just a simple solution. Is there somebody who would be able to create headers, like this is what an aspirational mission or vision is? And I don't know what those different titles would be. So if anybody has an idea of what the 3 titles were or whatever.
Let me suggest that Mike and I will get together and talk about that as a process, because I actually think it's the first step in the project team I was proposing. We do have a really rough draft of a vision for the field that was developed at the last summit. Mike led that group. I actually wasn't involved, so they presented at the end. I'd have to go back and look at the notes as to seeing what it was and what they wrote. But I think that one of the questions I would just pose generally for this group, not to solve now because we're out of time for right now, but perhaps punts to our next meeting, is does this group actually is this group just an update group that talks about how we develop mission, vision, and values, and perhaps hear from speakers like the other goal groups? Or is this actually just a working group that is working with a monthly check-in to actually help? Is this just the group that's going to work on the mission, vision, values? Because what we do know from the work is that there can really only be, you don't have 17 groups working on mission. You really want one for the field. And so maybe this one functions a little differently, but that's really a question for Mike, Tiffany, and probably Cecilia to talk through as well. But I'd love my proposal.
I mean, just for my own 2 cents on this, I mean, frankly, a better use of my time is doing something rather than listening.
Okay.
To speakers and so forth. I mean, I just think that I just feel that it's, you know, I can go to events to listen, and if we're going to be on a call once a month, I'd rather we be doing something. So if you want to, you know, as a working group, and I don't think the added time is going to be a killer for me. I mean, but that's just,
yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. We've also always sort of puzzled that maybe this group 3 is different because of the nature of what it's trying to manifest.
Well, it's got all the brilliant people on it.
That's right.
Yeah. What can I say?
So given that we're over time here, I guess we have Tiffany, I'll let you or Cecilia wrap up, of course. But I will talk. The action item I will take is to speak with Mike about what, if this is a working group, that what would a process look like that could lead us to what we actually do at the 2020 summit and points in between. I'll take that as an action item.
Well, this was a really great conversation. We are over time, so we will kill it. Mike and I have both been taking notes on the agenda and notes page, so we can get that sent out to you. But I think Andy's question is a good one to ponder because it's been brought up numerous times. And so I think that shows there's some weight behind it, is what do we want this group to look like? And to Peter's point, how much a commitment are we willing to put into it? And so if that's something that you guys would consider over the next month, and then we can regroup in October. All right, that's it. Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.